In such a way that it doesn't matter what is the meaning of spirituality, or you cannot divide life into separate aspects to say, okay, I'm going to have just physical materiality experiences, I'm going to be just a material person, or I'm going to be a spiritual person, because the reality is that we are neither. We are neither only spiritual beings, we are neither only material beings. I'm calling ourselves border zone creatures. We are influencing and interacting several planes in the same time. This is how I see it.
What's that line where we're spiritual beings having a physical experience? I think that's that's the way I sort of see it. That it's really, life for me is about experiences. And I was in business and that and for a long time, so I sort of you get stuck in that, I think. But I got stuck in it, and I came into this sort of work sort of accidentally. My wife said, oh, we're going to see this guy, so we went along and into this 3-day seminar in London. And then Friday night about 8 o'clock, he says, right, we're going to do 30 minutes of meditation, we're going to all go quiet, so we get ourselves in the right frame of mind to go out and do a firewalk. And luckily she had a hold of my hand because I was off. It's like, what? Firewalk? And yeah, it sort of started from there for me. And it wasn't the fire. The point of a firewalk isn't the firewalk. It's the experience of the firewalk. And then if you can do that, what else can you do? If that's that experience, what other experiences are you holding back from yourself? Are you not doing? And it made me, the first thing that came up for me was the question, why do we do what we do? And that's for me, that's been a sort of a 20-year search about figuring out why we do what we do. So yeah, but I do believe we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. So for me, life's about experiences, meeting different people, doing different things. Getting stuck in one place can be quite, I think getting stuck in one place, but we don't realize it's easy to sort of sit on the railroad tracks and just sit there through life, and an awful lot of people do. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, Alex, today, which is, it's quite interesting. It's something, overall, it's sort of integral theory, but I'd really interested to learn from you, your particular angle on it, your take on it. I see you've got quite a lot of videos, messages and that you put up on LinkedIn, and I see that you put quite a few up on Facebook. So if anybody is keen on sort of learning a bit more about Alex, his name's up there, Alan Ermenkopf, sorry. Go to Facebook, follow you can follow on Facebook because you've got a few videos up on there, I see. And it's great because I don't think you go into the detail, which a lot of people, it's not the detail, it's not the content they want. They want to know what the results are. So we'll go a little bit into the content today so that people get an idea of what it is. This system, for me, it's a system that you've created, which is really exciting, just sort of seeing how it works. So you've created this system, and then how it's going to sort of help, how it's going to help me or help the viewers. I see, hi Sabina, I see Sabina's on here, and there's a few people on the Facebook page as well. So welcome along. I probably won't go onto the Facebook page too much because I've got too many buttons and mice here and screens. So we'll jump straight in. Alex, the first question I want to ask is, ruling reality. Can we really influence our reality?
Yeah, we anyhow know very well how to observe reality. This is one of our primary skill, so to say. We are doing it daily with our 5 senses. So in a way, we are consuming reality daily, we are observing it, we are wondering about it. So it's very, very easy thing when we see the obvious part of reality is we to try to seek somewhere else for answers, to seek somewhere else for something new, for something different, for something other. But for me personally, the basic fundamental idea is that the truth is hidden in the obvious. And the thing that we mostly ignore is actually where the truth is. So I decided to go into my journey and into my focus deeply into the fundamentals of the obviousness of life. And then I realized that actually we don't need to become something. The only thing we need is just to be who we already are, the human being as we are created to. And actually we have only one very big superpower, and our superpower is called our superpositioning. As a border zone creatures, we long ourselves to be spiritual beings or to be something much more than what we are. But as we are put in this physical materiality, in these physical bodies, in these border zones between different worlds, we are actually in the perfect positioning to understand life, to rule life, and to experience all the realities there are. And most importantly for me is that we are interactional being. From the moment we are born, we're interacting with all the realms that exists. And if we are able to position ourselves and to just stay in our positioning, this is the place from where we are actually ruling.
But most of us never get that far, do we? We spend our lives, how can I say it? We spend our lives walking around asleep. And we're just reacting with the reality around us, what's outside us. So it's that waking up, is it? I think, yes, it's going into that waking up mode. So I was just thinking, is it too big a question? How did you wake up?
Yeah, I mean, the awakening in any person happens in stages. First, during our baby years and the first years of life, we are 100% identified with reality, and we doesn't even feel the separateness between us and everything around us. Little by little, and it is done with a purpose, because all of us are born as limitless beings put into these bodies of limitation. And we feel the wholeness in our first years of life. We just start mimicking reality. We see our parents and so on, and little by little, till we become teenagers, we understand that we are something more than what we thought. And so this identification process for everybody happens in different stages, in different ways. Some of us are more spiritual, some of us are even ignoring spirituality to the last possible minute of life. But anyhow, all of us as human beings know that we are not what our five senses are perceiving, that there is something more that is actually doing all the calculations and all the thinking and all the observation. And a lot of people call this the consciousness, but for me personally, consciousness is just part of the quadrant one of reality. And of course, awareness happens a little by little for all of us, and it is basically how we as human beings are disidentifying ourselves from reality. And long term, this is the place from where we can come to a position to become rulers of our own reality, instead of just reality consumers or reality observers, because we are here for a bigger purpose and a bigger meaning than just experiencing life.
I think I heard a great line the other day, a great quote. We all have a sense of our greatness. We all have a feeling of unmet expectations. I think we have a sense that there's something more, that there's something maybe spiritual, but something on a higher level, but we struggle to actually find it. And I think and it's leading into the quadrant here. I think that we're all on a journey, and there's different parts of that journey. And I think I want to get onto the quadrant now. There's ways that we can accelerate that journey. So this is more once you've woken up and realized, okay, I want to start fast tracking my journey, start to look into how I can evolve, develop, step into my potential. But it's going to be different for all of us. But there's for sure there's different there's different things that can help us accelerate that. I'm going to share my screen now, so we go into the quadrant.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so we can all see that. So this is the quadrant. This is something that comes from integral theory. If you've ever heard of somebody called Ken Wilber, he developed this, and it's his structure. He spent decades looking at different religions, different psychologies. I actually came to him through spiral dynamics, which is a particular theory. And he put them all together, and he sort of put them all into a pot, if you like, and stirred them all up, and came out with the blueprint for life. And this is a fascinating theory. It's got a lot of support. There's a lot of people that believe that this is how we evolve, and this is how we can fast track our journey. So just briefly, I'll just talk briefly, and then if Alex, if you can go into a little bit more depth into each of the quadrants, but I just want to just talk briefly about each of the quadrants. So this is a way that we can learn, we can evolve, we can fast track our journeys. And the first part, if we look at the upper left there, that's the interior. This is the evolution, the development that we do within ourselves. So going along to somebody like Peter Sage to do his 6-month EMF course, that would be working primarily internally. I think the EMF is quite good because it drops into each of these boxes, but this upper left is working on ourselves. So you could be going to Tony Robbins, you could be going to Peter Sage. It could be just self-work, recognizing and working on yourself, recognizing your limits, your beliefs, your values. It's that individual internal work. And changes can occur there. But in isolation, we're not going to get that full potential, that future, that full future. There's other parts that we have to evolve as a person. So if we go to the upper right there, in individual exterior, so this is internally how I can develop, but by doing new things. And one of the ways that I did it was with a buddy, was to actually compare notes. So I'm doing evolution myself, looking at my beliefs and values. But when I talk to my buddy, we can get into a lot more depth. So working with somebody else to learn to do new things, to compare notes. It's another way that we evolve, that we learn, that we fast track our journey. The lower left is starting to expand a bit more out into the collective. So rather than being myself or my buddy, it's the group, it's the peer group, this area. So ideas, concepts come up, and as a group, you know, a group is greater than the sum of the individuals, and this is where that learning comes from, that individual development, that evolution. It's going to help me evolve as a person to reach my full potential, to evolve. I'm going to do it faster, better. I'm going to get different angles from a peer group. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I learned remembered a great quote: treat others as you'd like to be treated. Well, this is a little bit more about treat others as they'd like to be treated. Recognizing that in a group, and especially as the world's moving so fast and we're expanding, the borders are sort of breaking down, people are coming together with very different cultures. And only by working as a peer group, as a group, comparing notes, comparing ideas, understanding, learning about different cultures, is that going to expand my potential. Traveling, meeting other people is a great way to learn, to experience, have a much wider experience. And then the lower right, the collective, is more about the systems, how we run things. This is about the fact that there's all sorts of different ideas, processes that we have in place, that we put in place. And for me, the way I would explain it is that the brain works on patterns. So if you think about you driving home from work and you get home and you can't remember how you've driven home, you can't remember having driven home. It's because the mind runs in these patterns, and when you do them enough, they become unconscious. So the mind sets these systems up. If you had to run aware of what's happening all around you all the time, you'd be exhausted by lunchtime. So the mind allows repetitive actions to just run, so you can do it unconsciously. So your conscious can be aware of other things. So because the mind has these systems it's running internally, that's what plays out around us. The world runs on these systems that have been created within us, but we put them outside around us. So when we look at things outside us, the way that things function, the way that education happens, for instance, it's a system setup. It's a mental model that's actually outside us. And they can be good and bad. So the education system, some people could argue, is functioning really well, and other people would say it doesn't suit their ideology, their way of thinking. So for me, this quadrant sort of it touches on all the different aspects of me as a person to evolve, to reach my potential. I can't do it by myself. I can learn a lot more with talking to somebody else, and I can learn different and a lot more by talking with a peer group, and I can learn a lot more by recognizing the systems that are running in the world around me. So that's my brief sort of explanation of the quadrant, but I'm quite fascinated, Alex, with going into this in a little bit more depth, because you actually run this as a system when you're working with clients or groups. So we'll just go on to the next upper left quadrant, and just if you can give us a little bit more background, it's the wrong way, on a little bit more depth in this quadrant.
Yeah. For me, these quadrants and this idea is very fascinating, because I come from the fundamental question: why can we as human beings not see the creator, and why it's impossible to see what is beyond creation, but we can creator look like, and so on, based on the expressions in the reality. And also I ask myself, well, actually, I can even not see myself. All the time, what we are doing as human beings is we are just seeing the expressions of ourselves. And in the quadrant number 1, that's why for me it's very interesting, because in the quadrant number 1 is all our inner interaction that is happening only within our head and only within ourselves. And if we don't talk about it, people are not even going to understand what is happening within our head. Maybe through the way we are doing things and the way we are behaving, they can deduct what is happening in our head. But basically, a lot of things are happening within us. This is the so-called our inner world, our internal self. And for me, it's very important, because there are a lot of labels, and we know from the Elite Mentorship Forum that it is a very interesting 6-month program. For me, it's like a boot camp where people are learning how not to stick to any label, but just to learn the fundamentals as much as possible without labels, because all the labels are just created in the quadrant number 1 from all of us as human beings. And this internal part, so awareness, perception, consciousness, subconsciousness, all our dreams, our visualization, our memory of experience, pattern recognition, everything that is happening within our brain, this is for me what is the quadrant number 1. And here, when people are going into meditation, what they are doing is they are identifying themselves from the quadrant number 1. They understand that they're neither their passions, neither their experiences, neither their thoughts. So what is happening in this quadrant number 1 is when we as human beings understand that the I amness is never seen, but the expression of the I amness we see through all this that is happening in quadrant number 1. So more and more we become aware of who we are based on our thoughts, everything that we compute as the outer reality and so on. But basically, we cannot see ourselves. You cannot see me. You are now seeing my body. You see my thoughts. You understand a little bit about me, but actually what is exactly inside of us, we cannot understand. And that's why I have created this for myself, this paradox, which is very well explaining it, because according to me, inside of us, we are limitless beings. And then all the awareness that we receive during life, it's still limited. All the perception is still limited. All the consciousness level to which we are able to express some part of ourselves, it's still limited. So all these things that I'm putting there, it's still part of the inner limitation within us. So we are limitless being, and the first experience with the limitation that we see is that our brain cannot express everything that we are. The first conflicts are happening within our heads. We say, well, I want this, or I dream about it, and then something happens in our mind, and not everything is possible to be expressed or even explained with words, and so on and so on. So for me, it's very important, we as human beings, to learn that we are not all that is put here on the screen in the quadrant number 1, because a lot of people say, okay, we are individualized consciousness. Yes, in quadrant number 1, we are expressing ourselves through the conscious awareness, but we are not just simple and mere consciousness, because consciousness to exist, we need to have the brain that is also working with the consciousness, because consciousness and subconsciousness are the two parts of us with which we can work a lot. And then there is a lot of inner work that can be done, a lot of books that can be read. And there is very big potential in this quadrant number 1, which is helping us all to actually long-term learn how to influence reality, because influencing reality starts with us influencing and working in this quadrant number 1. When we have our positioning as limitless beings, then all these things, awareness, I'm not striving to be more aware, to be more conscious, because I already am everything that I seek to be. I don't need to be more conscious. The only thing I need to do is to be willing and daring to express more of myself on a higher conscious level. So here is the big gimmick about change. Change is actually an illusion, and what we as human beings are perceiving is change is actually we allowing our I amness to express more of itself in the realities. So we actually don't need to change. The only thing we need to do is to be more of who we already are, just to be more willing to express ourselves. And that's why all of us have some limitations in the moment, and we have expressed ourselves to some extent, and we are expressing daily more and more of who we are, and we are daring to express more and to express more limitlessness, because actually this is what is creating then change in all the other quadrants.
I think it's, and I think this is, for me, self-development, the first part is self-awareness. And this is the first quadrant that people, they never get to that self-awareness stage. They're still asleep. And we see the behaviors in other people, and people react with the environment outside them, but people, once they start to wake up, become more self-aware. And this is that first quadrant that they run into, becoming internally aware of what's going on. And it happens first with awareness, and then they can change on to, then they can change that. But it's definitely that first hurdle is just self-awareness. You talk about it, but most people just never get to that point, do they? They stay in that almost disassociated, unaware of what's happening inside. It's just that external reaction. We see it, and that's just how people behave. They don't go internally. It's quite interesting that we've gotten society to that stage where we don't want to go internally. We almost don't want to feel the emotions. We end up in society with this ease because we're under this constant stress and pressure of just living in society with going to work on the tube, or the loans that we've got to have our house, or the stresses of running the business, or worrying about the children. It's better to switch it off so we become unaware of what's happening internally for us. Cool. So we'll go to the second one, Alex. Oops, going the wrong way again. There we go. So this
for the right. For the second quadrant, it's individual and it is external. So this is actually our bodies. Here lies the biggest problem. How can we be a limitless being? How can we be 100% infinite inside of us? And then we see this body and we say, well, actually, there are a lot of limitations. I'm creating in this way, why I have this particular face. And then the expression of the I amness through the body, it's why we actually need the body in the physical matter reality. And this is now why when we speak about health, when we speak about taking care of our body, because if we don't have this body functioning in the way it is supposed to function, we cannot experience the feelings. A lot of us want the feeling. The heart is not the mind part. It is a little bit down. Then we have the guts, and there are, in all the different religions, there are different labels regarding everything that is happening in the body. And the body is such a big system that it is very hard to actually understand everything so quickly. And a lot of us as people from the personal development industry are willing to hack the body, willing to work with the body, and so on and so on. For me here, the biggest practice regarding the body that is helping the human being is the so-called fasting, because only during fasting, we as human beings are possible to disidentify the I amness from all the body functions. It is like in meditation, we are disidentifying ourselves from quadrant number 1. With fasting, we are disidentifying ourselves with quadrant number 2. When we are fasting in this mode, we understand that we are actually not our body, that we can move into totally different state of being. And then long term, we understand that keeping our vibration high, all the feelings, we cannot go into relationships even without using our body. We cannot express love, express all the different things without using our body. So our body is important. Now, in this digital age with Zoom, it's much more easy to move it around the world and to interact with whoever we want. But basically, the energies we are feeling, we are doing it through the body. Of course, for the I am to exist, it can exist in a not so healthy body, in not so energetic body. It can exist in low vibrations and so on. For me personally, I'm not a big supporter of people just willing and wanting to go into high vibrations all the time. I like to be low. I like sometimes to be ill, to just experience and enjoy the different types of limitations. Of course, pain maybe is the biggest problem in the body. When we feel pain, we really it comes very deep into us. And a lot of people are just having different techniques, how to work with this. And there are a lot of healing techniques, how healing is coming from the I amness and from the limitlessness and can be expressed in the outer body reality. But for me personally, when I decided to try how is it really possible that if I change my inner world and my inner identity, I can change the body. I was 137 kilogram person, and I decided to change my identity and to influence my body. And I embraced the identity of a 90 kilogram person. And after I did it, by the different processes that I trusted, actually now my body is much more closer to this 90 kilogram person. So the physical matter reality of my body is changing. So basically, through what is happening in the quadrant number 1, I'm constantly interacting and influencing quadrant number 2. Of course, what we are intaking and what we are putting in our body is also important. And that's why we are to monitor and to really cherish this part of reality as much as every other part of reality. Because even if we have the big brain or we are very strong in the inner reality, if we cannot interact well with the body, then still something is going to be broke.
Thanks, Alex. It's fascinating. I want to ask a whole lot of questions, but I'm going to wait till the end because the questions sort of they touch on all the different quadrants. So I'll go on to the third quadrant, the lower left. This is, as I said, it's like the peer group. So we're looking at the bigger group, the experiences. So the lower left.
Yeah. For me, this quadrant number 3 was the real breakthrough and revelation and aha moment for me personally, because this internal collective is something that is invisible. And we have the tendency to be significant and to think that everything that we think, it's our own thoughts, and this is something that we come to, and so on and so on. But actually, now we are living in the 22nd century. Our bodies were put in the 21st century. Our bodies are put in this time. If we were living, let's say, 5 or 6 or 1,000 years ago, our language was going to be different. We were going to be using different labels and so on and so on. Now in the 21st century, we use quantum mechanics labels. We use so much science labels and so on and so on. And we can very easily understand each other, though we are in the different parts of the world. And actually, a lot of people, when they're speaking about the quantum field and downloading and all this pool of knowledge, if we are humble enough to understand that there is nothing new under the sun and that everything is available for everybody, it's the same as the limitless being that is inside of us. It's all the time there and it's ready to be expressed. Also, the limitless potential of humanity as a whole has always been there, and it doesn't matter if we tap or we don't tap, it is always there. I have asked myself why we have exactly these religions, these beliefs, these worldviews, and don't have others. Because if you go into brainstorming, you can create thousands of different worldviews and beliefs and religions that are in the moment, but we have exactly several religions and beliefs that are primarily being in humanity through all the history. And all this accumulated knowledge, which is actually hidden, and we don't see it in the physical matter reality, but it is helping us to behave civilized and to be much more into alignment. Because the biggest purpose of the I am, when it enters this universe and this reality, in order to become a ruler, it needs to be positioned and to be aligned, nothing else. Positioning and alignment is everything that we need. And instead of fighting, because we human beings tend to fight for religions, for beliefs, for different labels, we are using actually for the same thing, which is quite because when you go into the beyond, there are no labels. And then we are fighting with each other's which exact label to use for the same thing that is beyond. So it's a little bit funny, but yeah, I mean, at least we can use all this collective internal, because it is helping us to really understand each other much faster. And whenever somebody is expressing or just trying to say something new to the world, all the other people are just accepting it because there is nothing new under the sun.
I love this quadrant. It's come up for me recently. I was listening to he was one of the English. My niche is sports. I was listening to one of the English rugby players, and he was talking about what drove him to eventually the English team to win the World Cup, and it was about the collective. It was about the we. So we talk with our coaches about setting my goals, my personal goals, and there's a certain amount of motivation and drive to do that. But for him, being part of this team, it was a bigger goal for the collective of the team to go for that goal, that vision of winning the World Cup. And then in that same, he was interviewing a New Zealand player, and the New Zealand player took it to another depth. He played his game at his level to represent the country for his whānau, for his family, for his, that's a New Zealand word for extended family. So he wasn't just playing for himself. He wasn't just playing for his team. He was playing for something more than country. Country, it's a little bit sort of hard to sort of grasp a hold of, but your extended family, your culture, your heritage was what drove him. So that really came out for me in this quadrant. What motivates us? To a certain extent, our individual goals motivate us. But how much more motivation, how much more focus do we get on having a vision of for the greater good? So how much is my motivation going to be, as my goal setting going to motivate me, as compared to doing something for climate change, which, you know, we can come together as a group, and that can, if they turn that into a cultural movement, something that we were doing, rather than this duality that we have where we leave it to the governments or some rich guys somewhere. It needs to become we, and then that gives us much more motivation.
Yeah, and here lies the power of the so-called masterminds, and this is one of the big powers of the human beings, that we can work together in very large numbers. No other being on the planet can work in such large numbers as we human beings. We can unite together in thousands and millions regarding one specific topic or idea, and we can really go into unity very fast in different areas of life.
I'd love to think we can do that for climate change. It's not easy to get there, and I don't know what the motivation would be to get the world to go, we need to stop doing what we're doing, and we need to change for the greater good. So and that's just that much more powerful when we have that greater group, I'm thinking sort of a cultural movement. We really need to change what we do. We need to take it on the individual level. So for climate change, so I need to look at the upper left on what I individually need to do, but I'm doing that as my part of the lower left, which is the greater good. And this is going back to where I started. This is, we can't look at our journey in individual parts, or if we just focus on me and what I can do and my goals, it'll get me so far, but it won't create that greater result, that potential, that greater potential I have. And I think we all, when I said before, we all have that sense of greatness. Is that greatness just me alone, or is it us as a group? And I think there's much more power to look at my impact on the world is part of a group, a culture. It's a fascinating, just that quadrant, but they're all interconnected. So we'll go on to the fourth one, the fourth quadrant, the lower right. I've got to click on it.
Yeah. For me, the fourth quadrant is very interesting because we have the two things. The one thing in the fourth quadrant, external collective, is the universe, cosmos, nature, the construct of reality. This is the expression of the so-called creators, which are behind the scene. And this is something that when we come to this planet, we already have it. And then the second thing is the so-called civilization. If I was here in the year, let's say, 1000, I was not going to see the cars, all these technologies and so on that we now in the 21st century are enjoying. But actually the human civilization, industrialization, technology, it is what we as human beings were able to express as civilization based on our understanding of the other three quadrants in the quadrant number 4 and into the universe and reality. And in the moment, some people like it, some people don't, but reality in the quadrant number 4 is the nature plus the human intervention through changing the nature in the, what we say, civilization, buildings, and whatever. Now, if we can create a close to nature environment or away from nature environment, this is something else. But anyhow, since we are expressing these limitless beings through the centuries, we have come till now where we see, okay, we have expressed in the past so many rectangular forms and linear forms. Now a lot of architecture is more and more coming into different forms which are much more closer to nature, and so on and so on. And in the next 200 or 300 years, the civilization and this quadrant 4 can be much more different and much more conscious, or much more aware about everything, and much more interconnected, and so on and so on. And the beautiful thing is that all of us are anyhow expressing ourselves in this quadrant 4. It doesn't matter if we are working for somebody or if we are doing some businesses ourselves alone. We are benefiting towards the civilization and industrialization and everything that is the impact of the human being in the nature.
Cool. This is, for me, this overall, we have those systems in place, whether we're aware of it or not. We're running systems, and we mostly do it unconsciously, that they just run. And governments have set up, countries have set up, businesses have set up, and if we just let them go, then these systems will be set up. So if we start a business, I was working with a couple in the business a little while ago, and they decided they really wanted to understand how they were going to get the business going. It was an IT business. And normally you would start a business and it would just run. You'd employ people, systems would get in place, things wouldn't work, you'd put other things in place. But these couple were quite switched on. The two of them sat down. It was a male and a female. So they weren't in a relationship, but they wanted to start the business together. So we worked with them to figure out, for them to understand how they saw the business. So you could do it on a conscious level, a sleep level. Well, the business is going to do this and this and this. So we went deeper with them, and they were open to this. So they went a little bit deep, well, a lot deeper actually. And so we explored the metaphors. So what happened with the woman was the business was, her metaphor for the business was, we're on a boat, we're going down the river, there's a few rocks, we can get rid of them, you know, we can sort of slow it down, we can speed up, but we're going with the river, and we're sort of, you know, we're going down there, we know where we're going, but we've got a little bit of sort of movement around here. And that was her idea of how the business was going to run. And his metaphor was, it's a train on the tracks, and it's going as fast as it can, might speed up a little bit, might slow down, but it's going this way and it's on the tracks. And as soon as they expressed those two metaphors, you could see straight away that the business was going to have problems because they had two different concepts of how the business is going to run. Now, on words, when they talk to each other, they had the same idea about the business, but on a deeper level, you could see that on a deeper level was where the systems come from. They were going to start to run into clashes further down the line. So it's really important to understand that we're going to put these systems in place. It's how the brain works. We're going to put them in place. We have to recognize them. And that's that first part of waking up, I think. What fascinates me about this, I was just going to tell a story. I did athletics many decades ago. The sub 4-minute mile couldn't be broken. They proved this scientifically for years. Scientists have come out. So very much about the bottom right. The scientists had said that it can't be done. They did research on it. They wrote papers on it. The body can't physically do it. And they talked to everybody. They'd done the seminars. So they'd convinced everybody, the bottom left, that it can't be done. We as a human race can't run faster than a 4-minute mile. But it took Roger Bannister to really go into the upper left, to this internal, I'm not going to believe that, and I'm going to work through to actually break the 4-minute mile. And it took him a lot of work. He did a lot of training on that. And one of the big parts was actually to visualize himself running a sub 4-minute mile. Even though the other quadrants said it couldn't be done, he didn't believe them. He went into himself and he started to evolve this concept of being able to run a sub 4-minute mile. Now he actually did it. Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and immediately he broke the other quadrants. So within a year, 3 other people had done it, and now it's a regular occurrence. People are breaking the 4-minute mile on a semi-regular basis. We get stuck into those systems. In that case, the scientists had said that we as a group can't do this, and they'd convinced everybody, and so we followed that pattern. We believed somebody else's pattern, and it just took that one person, and suddenly it's being done all the time. And it's happened across sports and across businesses. Sports, something I sort of tend to focus on. The sub 2-hour marathon was broken recently. Again, they'd scientifically proven it couldn't be done. Surfing has been around for millennia, for hundreds and hundreds of years, but it was only in up until the 1940s, they could only surf 25-foot waves. Part of it, I think, was because of the quality of the boards. They were planks. They were quite heavy. Until late in 1940, they decided that we need to push this. We need to go internally and decide that we're going to individually change it. I think there's a lot of drive with this quadrant from that internal thing. I'm going to change the way that the systems have told us that we can and can't do things. And so from the 1940s, up until the 1940s, they never surfed something over 25 feet. Subsequent to that, now surfing massive waves, 60 feet plus, huge waves. But it took this individuals to individually break through themselves to then change this whole quadrant system. The question I wanted to ask that Alex was, we live in this dual world. We look at duality. There's me and you, or there's us and them. We have cultures that are us against them, and it doesn't work. I sorry to talk about sports, but I have more anecdotes and more stories to tell about sports. The golden generation in English football was David Beckham and Rooney, and these guys were phenomenal footballers, some of the best in the world. But they weren't a team. They weren't fighting for the group, the we, that lower left quadrant. And they should have achieved way more than they did, but they never quite managed to get through to actually into pretty much all the finals. They never won anything, but they were recognized as being one of the best teams that the world had ever produced. Today, with Gareth Southgate, he's brought in one or two mental coaches, mind school coaches from New Zealand. Now, New Zealand has a much more of a community, a group feel because of the heritage of the country, and it goes on in other countries. It's not just unique to New Zealand heritage, but he's brought that into this understanding of culture and the heritage into the English football team. So you've got the English football teams and very good players, not comparable to some of the best in the world, but you've now got a group situation going on. And that group, so that lower left team, is much more about the group. So they're much more about oneness. So the question I wanted to ask there was, Alex, what is your concept, the duality that people are stuck in, and the oneness that we should be driving to?
Yeah, for me personally, we need to keep both, because some countries are very strong in the collective. Some countries are very individualized, centered. But basically, if we go only into the collective and the oneness, then we are going to lose the I amness of the individual. And so it's always to balance. I mean, the best solution if the I amness that is inside of us, if this individual willingly is giving some himself up for some greater good that is creating very good results for all of the above. But if you put very little even force or law into it, then for example, if you create a big law about the climate change and you oblige everybody to do it, then because this is the interesting thing about the 4 quadrants, they're working only if there is authenticity, and authenticity always happens from the inside out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was wondering there, with a company, a business, you need to have I suppose for a company, for a sports team, you have that group collective. So here I'm thinking about, a lot of companies have the values of the company written in the stone and put on the wall behind the desk, and nobody takes any notice of them. But for a company to function well, they need that collective group feel. But that collective group feel is made up of the individuals. They each individually have to understand the values.
And it is something more, because, for example, if you say Real Madrid or big English football clubs, it's much more than individuals. It is something that is already there, that is a non-physical being, but it exists. It has its own life.
Yes, Manchester United was like that. They had that groupness, but each of the new team was brought in as individuals. They were brought in to understand how they individually, their skills were going to come in and help the team. And I think if with the business, so if you're onboarding somebody in a business, it's really making sure that they understand that where they fit into the big scheme of the organization, so that they feel part of it, but they feel as though they can express themselves.
Yeah, for me it's coming more and more, because let's say this quadrant number 4, some of us are working for money or don't like where we're working, or whatever are the reasons there for this quadrant 4. But after we open our eyes during the day, we spend more of our time anyhow in this quadrant number 4. So as more as we have high conscious businesses where the individuals are really enjoying their daily reality and enjoying giving everything that they have in the other 3 quadrants for the benefit of the company and for the benefit of all the human beings, then we are going to have a much more better society. That's why one of my long-term dream is to see much more high conscious companies, also not only high conscious individuals.
And to get those high conscious companies, you need to do it at an individual level, those higher consciousness people. Can you tell us a little bit about how you deliver this? It's fascinating as a quadrant. You actually work with people, don't you? Work with individuals?
I have created in the moment 2 programs. One is calling Ruling Reality Basics, which is working strongly about the quadrant number 1, and how to use all these tools that are available for you in order to influence. Called Beyond Success Reality, which is about quadrant number 4 and how you as a human being to actually influence and work long-term also. Even it's much more harder for spiritual people to understand that it is okay to have excess, to have more than enough, and to be able to become benefit for others. And basically these 2 programs that I have created till now, it's monthly programs where there are 28 videos. I'm interacting with the people. And long term, I'm inviting every one of them to go into the 6-month boot camp of the EMF, where they can experience much more outgrowth and transcending of themselves, and to really deep dive long term into the different areas they want to go in all the quadrants.
Excellent. Cool. I think we've just about come up on the hour. So one last statement, one last sentence, Alex.
Yeah, for me, ruling reality is the core, not the quadrant now 1, not the quadrant 2, not the quadrant 3, not the quadrant 4, just ruling all the quadrants and enjoying everything, enjoying your inner world, enjoying your outer world, enjoying the interaction, just enjoying life.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alex. Thanks for everybody coming along. Thanks, guys. My computer's running a bit slow at the moment. So thank you very much, guys. And this has been fascinating. I could go on for another hour, Alex. So maybe we'll have another chat next time.
Yeah,
anyway,
and we can choose a different topic.
There's a lot of depth in here. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys all next time. This time next week, 9 a.m. on the Thinking Part of Life. Thanks very much, Alex. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.